Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the screening of the documentary film American Textures. My name is Kaori Uchisaka. I'm the director of the International Student Office. I'm really honored to introduce you to the director and producer of this documentary, Mr. Arnd Wächter of Crossing Borders Films. We're very pleased that he has returned to SVA after a similar event hosted by the International Student Office last year. During the past year or so, there have been numerous reports of incidents surrounding violence against African Americans by law enforcement officials across the nation, and social movements such as Black Lives Matter has gained traction. Most recently, the protest movement started at the University of Missouri at Columbia has highlighted the degree of racism experienced by many individuals on college campuses. Talking about race and interracial conflict at a campus is difficult. It's something that has been missing from the International Student Office's work, even though advocating for intercultural understanding and the integration of international students and domestic students is a crucial part of our jobs. Discussion about cultural diversity shouldn't only be about international versus US students or Black versus white students. To reap the benefits of a learning environment that is truly diverse, we need to be able to talk about what makes us feel foreign from each other, even if it leads to tension or even conflict. At SVA, about a third of our students identify as white, around 40% is international, and the rest are Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, Asian or other minority race and ethnicity categories. But because we're in New York City and we're used to racial and cultural diversity, we don't really make it a point to talk about this on campus, especially doing public events like these. So I'm looking forward to hearing from our student panelists after this screening and having a candid discussion with you all. So please be sure to stay for the discussion. And thank you for joining us today. And now I'd like to introduce you to Arnd.
Jonathan, can you bring the light up here? Yes. I actually want to sit here. I want to be a bit closer to you because I did that last time and it worked for me because I was closer to you, much closer to you. There is a student panel. Kaori introduced that already. And the idea for that is I'm an outsider, and it's obvious. I have an accent. I'm from Berlin originally. I lived 20 years in different countries, and I come to this topic with a lot of humility and a lot of concern as well, talking to friends and colleagues here in the United States around issues of diversity, interracial relations within the United States. So that's why it's so important for me to have students right here from SVA who are going to be with me after the film, creating here a half circle, so we are creating almost a circle, exploring these topics and afterwards and entering conversation and dialogue with each other. Can the six of you stand up for a moment, just that people can see your face already, that I'm gonna not be alone afterwards right here? That is Alex, Francis, David, Laura, Maria, and Jordan. Thank you. Thanks. So you're gonna hear them. You're gonna hear SVA students and what that topic means to them. I said that I come with a lot of humility to this topic. I'm coming as in within documentary making. I feel we are committed professionally to listening. So the people who are going to speak and the people who are going to bring their voice present are the two Latino, two African American, and the two Caucasian Americans who are going to be in the story of the film. At the same time, obviously, the story of the filmmaker and the perspective of the filmmaker will come through. So I'm going to say a little bit more about my own background so you can place it. I'm here at the School of Visual Arts, and you are into photography and film and other art forms. So I want to give you a little bit more of my own background so you know where I'm coming from and why I feel passionate about this. Jonathan, can you bring up just our website with the trilogy? It's already there, probably. So after September 11, I created a non-profit for cross-cultural education. I mentioned I lived abroad for the last 20 years. lived in Tokyo, lived in London, did my postgraduate studies in London, lived in Tokyo, Japan, in Granada, Spain for 6 years. Am now based in Scotland for the last 6 years. After September 11, created a non-profit for cross-cultural education. At the time, creating programs for American students studying abroad in Spain who were not allowed to go to Morocco for liability reasons. Most American universities had to say, don't go to Morocco. Created for them an independent program. We have about 1,000 students going into Morocco. And from that came the awareness that those students who are on study abroad are already privileged within the United States. So there was my place of learning about the US. And then was like, well, how can we reach students on campus? And that's where the idea of film came in. And we partnered, I found a professional film team and produced this first film on the left, which is set in Morocco for Moroccan students, traveling together, exploring Muslim-Western relations. Very, very current for us in the world we live in the complex world we live in, and certainly after the Paris attacks on Friday, very, very relevant for Europe and within the refugee crisis. The second film was set in China, The Dialogue, and now the third one, that's what we're going to see, American Textures, set in the United States, applying intercultural skills like empathy, openness, curiosity, ability to listen to each other, deep listening, to interracial dialogues within the US. I'm a trained conflict mediator, and within conflict mediation, it's not about being attached to the resolution. It's not about avoiding conflict. It's about recognizing conflict as a place that calls us into relationship. It calls us into learning the skills to stay present where things are uncomfortable. Realizing that the place where we are, pushing our edge and are really leaving our comfort zones are the places where we learn the deepest. And allowing as well conflict as a place where we get cooked together and where our relationships deepen in the process. Just within the Paris attack context, there was somebody talking about, is intercultural dialogue naive? Is it possible? And somebody said, well, to reduce violence through the process of deepening understanding. What a vision. So thank you for being here. We're going to watch now American Textures together. The film is designed to initiate dialogue. So that's why I'm so delighted to have the 6 of you with me at the front. And thank you to everybody for being here. Thanks. Yes, so there are a few microphones around, and we would love to be in conversation with each other. And the 6 of you were open to respond a little bit to the story. As in, what is something you're sitting with? What is a thought? What's a feeling you're sitting with after watching the story of the 6 of them on screen? Who's?
Okay. My name's Laura. I'm a senior motion graphic designer. The one scene that really hit me was, I can't remember his name, like the freckle face male. He said that he gave the story of how slaves were buried under Wall Street, and then I think the guy's name was Kyle. He said we're only taught one history, and it kind of hit me, and I'm like, oh wow, we are taught one history, and there's this whole other story I don't know about, and now I want to know about it, but we're like, oh, I have to start somewhere. So this film kind of like opened up my eyes about it.
My name is Fuenzas. I'm a sophomore studying fine art. One issue that I really kind of struck me was the tension between the female and the
It's Kenya?
male. Yeah. The
And
male.
Colin,
yeah.
Mm.
I think it's very apparent, especially if you're trying to discuss something so sensitive. The 2 sides that they kind of represented. I've had issues where I try to address something that's painful for me, and people that don't live those issues will just see it as just an attack or me just being emotional, and they don't really try to just concentrate on what I'm saying. And I think that's one thing that really struck me in the film.
Hi, my name is David Perron. I'm a graphic design student, junior. This movie was really emotional. I'm so sorry. I was just shaking like the whole time. But one of the things that kind of stuck out was the guy from LA. He talked a little bit about like confidence and what I guess his situation really does to him. To his psyche, like growing up and just his mentality. I think that's something that we don't really talk about, like how race relations or how, we're treated really affect us like long term. So I thought that was really impactful.
My name is Alex. I'm a fine arts major. I guess one of the issues that I was kind of listening to were when they went to the cities, how the people in the communities were all about needing a second chance, better economic opportunities, what were cultural centers were being gentrified, and how all that history was being lost. And yeah, there's a huge emotional wall that one needs to get over with, but there are real lives that matter, that are being affected, and these are the things that we need to get past that emotional wall to resolve these issues.
Can we stay just for a moment with you? You mentioned as well you're shaking. You were shaking when listening, and you mentioned that. Help me again with your names. I'm so bad. I'm dyslexic with names, by the way, and Frances. And Frances, you mentioned as well that when you're, I don't know if it was on campus, but if you share something has directly to do, that's how I heard you, it has directly to do with your identity. It's directly to do with the painful issue. And the person in front of you straight away experiences more as an attack and responds to the information rather than responds to the story and the emotions behind it. Help us. I feel this is a moment where we can invest empathy. This is a moment where we can invest deep listening. This is a moment where we are together in a common space of, we really want to feel what is happening for you. And I imagine that being at a university, and also in order to deal with emotions, sometimes it's easier for us to go to intellectualizing it or making statements that are really important social statements that need to be made. And yet, can you help us a bit more? As in, when you say shaking, what were you sitting with? As in, help us to sense that, help us to feel that.
I don't know, there's the idea of like having an open forum and being able to talk about these issues and for it not to get destructive, for people to be offended. I mean, that happened, but overall everybody came as one and it was a constructive thing. You don't rarely get to see that, so it was, it was just really impactful. I'm shocked, that they were able to kind of sustain that connection, for as long as the project was going on.
Frances, do you want to add something?
I think one thing that people don't seem to realize is when someone is living something and they have issues that they carry with them throughout their whole lives, and it becomes so ingrained in them that when they're trying to speak about it, it's impossible to not get emotional, especially if you see people you care about, people that you've lived with, also being affected by those issues. I think people should try to realize that although it may seem like it's an attack, you should try to listen more and not get so into yourself. And I don't think I don't think that would help in any way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Maria, and I kind of wanted to speak to what Frances was saying, but I've realized, that sometimes you're going through things, and it's really hard to speak about them without getting emotional or getting like affected. And of course, you can't expect to, I don't know, to be calm with things that are so ingrained in you. But for me, something that really resonated with me from the movie was that I'm Dominican, and so when we were first introducing each other, I was like, no, I've never really felt like racism in my life in any heavy way. And then after that moment when they're speaking and Colin, I think was his name, was like, well, this, like, what happened with slavery was not my fault. I can't feel responsible for that, or can't relate to that as well, because I didn't do that. It's my ancestors. And I kind of feel like it relates to sort of my situation being a Dominican with Haiti. I feel like I've always felt like I've never felt that in a personal way. Like I've always been very related to people from Haiti. I've always seen them as exactly like me, and I haven't behaved in the way that many people in my country do. But at the same time, like, I can't help but feel guilty like embarrassed about my country and guilty about that behavior. And sometimes I feel like I've judged the Holocaust. Maybe I've been like, how did people not do anything? Or like what, sometimes the racism that happens here, I've been like, how does this happen? But it's so close to home, and sometimes I don't see it, I think. I don't know.
You know, you bring up the feeling of guilt, and I guess that's also one of the reasons why many don't want to go there, don't want to go to this, because it is extremely uncomfortable, and at the same time, how else do we learn and grow our stamina? Santos was saying that several times, is, and you need to grow your stamina. And in a way, what he was saying to us as well is, grow your skills as a human being. You know, grow your heart, grow your ability to sit with empathy with something that's very uncomfortable. Jordan.
I'm Jordan. I'm a fourth-year design student.
Can you bring it a bit closer?
Sure, I can. I think all of us were touched, and just reflecting on what we've been talking about is when Kenya was speaking, and she was with emotion and with anger. And I think when Colin, was so hurt and was so angry. And it's funny because I'm embarrassed to admit, but I've been in that situation too, where I've been in a discussion and someone has a lot of emotion and a lot of rage coming from a standpoint that I don't necessarily understand. And I've reacted similarly. And where I've been like, oh God, like I'm sorry. I don't know how you want me to react. I don't know how you want me to express. I don't know. And I want to. I want to empathize, and I want to, but you close off. And I understood that. But when he expressed, I need to put aside my ego. I need to put aside, it's not about me, it's about the collective. And when Santos was like, it's about the collective. It's not you. It's an expression of an emotion because it's something systematic. It's something all-encompassing. It's a collective. It's not just you. It's not you. And I think that was something that I related to in a way that made me understand my reaction then a lot better. So I thought that was really eye-opening and something relatable.
Thank you. We want to open it up to you as well, and there are a couple of microphones there as well. So there can be, here's our circle, here the 7 of us at the front, but if there's responses right now to what was happening in the story of the 6 of them on screen, but also some of the responses right here of the 6 of them in front of us. Is there a thought? What thoughts and feelings are you sitting with?
Hi, my name is Richor. I'm a VCS major, and I'm from Haiti, and I could relate to what you were saying.
Bit closer.
I could relate to what you were saying, and I think all of that just stems from just people being afraid to actually say something. You know what I mean? Like to stand up. I know a couple of months ago that my friend was working at Dallas Barbecue, and there was which is a very heavily populated like queer community, and a black man actually just like assaulted one of the waiters who happened to be gay, and no one said anything. So it's just like it's a similar situation where if somebody does see a racist act, they don't know what to say. It's like you want to stand up, but if you're like the black guy who stands up, then you're just an angry black person. There's like all these stereotypes, and then it just keeps going on. And I don't know. I think it's up to us, the younger community, to just try to like do something. Just talk about it and get something done. Yeah.
Somebody else who would love to respond and follow on that? What thoughts, what feelings are you sitting with? Or if the six of you want to respond to something comes up?
Hi, I'm Laurel. I work in residence life. I found myself really reacting during the conversation between Kenya and Colin because I could see where they just were not communicating with each other, and it was so interesting to watch them have to kind of struggle and sit with it, and I found myself being hopeful. From their dialogue, and then from the dialogues that we're having now, and that I hope that will continue to have beyond today, because I think being able to sit in that place of discomfort and then have some self-reflection and realization, to answer something that you had said earlier, Arnd, about like, is intercultural dialogue, is it naive to think that will make a difference? And I think it's not naive. I think it's the only thing that will make a difference, is building that understanding.
Thank you. Jonathan, a question to the back. Would it be possible to switch off the air? Or would that create a really bad air in here? Shall we try it? Thank you. Somebody else who would like to?
I'm sorry, I'm Jeff. I'm the provost.
Bit closer to the.
I'm Jeff, and I'm the provost of the college, and okay. I am very moved by the subtext, which to me most clearly suggested that when you have a multicultural group, you have multiple cultural styles, and that's not a simple thing. If you're sitting at the kitchen table as if you would talk to your brother, you're not talking to you're talking to somebody who has a very different imagination of the kitchen table, or very different experiences of the kitchen table. And one of the beauties of this kind of a community, and having people from so many cultures from all around the world working together in small groups for years at a time, is the possibility to actually learn how to do that. What to get terrified by, what to take deeply personally, and what to say, oh no, this is okay. Let's hear this out, and we can move along. And many gradations of experience in between that.
Thank you.
I think this make me think that I'm Yoko, I'm International Student Advisor, and I'm from Japan, and I had a similar conversation with one of my friends at a graduate school. She's from Korea. And then there has been an issue between Japan and Korea,
and in the history, and then the country Korea is very angry about something that I would say my ancestor did to them. And then we had a heated conversation, and she was very emotional. And then I said, I'm sorry, like on behalf of my ancestors. Like I felt, at that moment, I felt responsible because I wouldn't have existed here with my ancestors. So I can see that, that's something in the past my ancestor did. But at that moment, I felt really responsible that my ancestor in Japan did it something to your ancestor, that I'm sorry. And then that really kind of took the conversation to a different level. And then we actually became best friend, and we live in the same building. We have the baby around the same time. We got engaged on the same day, and we see each other every day, and we became really, really good friends. So, and then I can see that between the Colin and Kenya, that conversation, and it was very uncomfortable. But I think that it was interesting that they brought up the idea about ancestors, and then one person's like, oh, we feel responsible ancestors, but then the other person's like, oh, that's something in the past that I cannot be responsible for. So it's really interesting to see how people feel about the past.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tony. I work for International Student Office. From my observation, in the beginning of the film, Kenya was very quiet. He didn't express a lot of opinion. And later on, he expressed shockingly what was in her mind. I think a lot of country or many cultures had a lot of historical baggage. But through open communication, mutual understanding, as the end of film, the negative energy can turn into a very good energy. And we know a lot of negative energy actually can lead to tragedy. But this is a happy ending. So how important communication is. Thank you.
Hi. Sorry. My name is Lauren. I'm actually coming from Teachers College, Columbia University. I'm very happy to be here today. I've gotten to kind of catch up with some old colleagues. I used to work here at SBA. And for me, I think what was interesting was, like as Tony had said, Kenya in the beginning, she was very quiet. But when they were having the back and forth discussion, I felt that her personality was very strong. And for me, I kind of distinguished who had a stronger personality and whose personality either, I don't know if it was weaker but people just didn't speak up as much. So when they heard that strong personality, a lot of people just clammed up. They're just like, oh my gosh. And then the girl at the end who said, she looked at her and was like, I wish I could do that. I wish my personality was strong like yours. I wish I could speak up. And I felt that that was a very interesting dynamic, because sometimes when people have strong personalities, they are misunderstood. Some people just say, oh, they're angry, or oh, they just talk loud, or they use their hands, or whatever the case may be. But it may just be because people are not used to dealing with such strong personalities, especially when the topics are so sensitive. So I feel like that combination of her strong personality that came out based on the sensitive topic, I think that's why a lot of people felt like, oh, well, I felt a certain way about it. Like Colin was saying, oh, I felt that I was being attacked. And he wasn't the only one that said that. When they were meeting on the porch, majority of the people said they felt the same way. But they also acknowledged that from the other side, there may be other things going on with Kenya, things that she's holding on to that maybe the other people didn't experience. And they're in the space. Like Kenya said, this is the space to do it. And I also noticed that Kenya, a lot of times when you were filming her, it seems like a lot of people were in segregated elements. And for them to come together and come outside of their element, I think that that's what really created the clash. Just her personality, and based on people not really talking about those sensitive topics. Just like Colin had mentioned, he never thought about it, he never talks about it, and other people said the same thing. So I think it was just a mixture, kind of like a potion. And I knew something was going to happen or blow up, but as everybody else had said, I didn't necessarily expect it to end the way that it did. It actually ended very positively. And for me, I think it was because Colin, especially, it seems like he didn't give up. And just like the freckled-faced guy said, you know, he stuck with it. Yeah, Santos. He stuck with it. And most people don't do that. So I thought that was really, really great. So.
And that's where I want to invite as well the awareness that we all are sitting with our background. There's a lot of diversity right here in the room. So all of us going to have experienced the interaction of the six of them through our personal lens and through our personal experience. So that's why it's so good to have the six of you at the front. Because Francis, I can imagine, connected very strongly to Kenya. Right? And I hear you, you know, showing the respect as well you have for Colin for staying present with it, and for Santos for being a mediator.
Hello, my name is Chad Murdoch. I'm a first-year film and video student. Just like how everybody else brought up the initial conversation between Kenya and Colin, I thought one thing that was very interesting is that Colin felt so attacked about what his ancestors did, but that's not all that Kenya was bringing up. She was also bringing up what it's like now. And I feel like that's like a reaction that you usually get, because when you think of racism, you think of, specifically in America, people feel like they're being guilted for slavery specifically, or civil rights movement specifically, but it's also subconscious things now, and it's like very subtle things that we hear like every day, like growing up, like, well, for me specifically, growing up in like a suburban area where I was in like honors classes with like all white kids, and they would say things like little things that in the back of my mind I'm just like, you know, like I gotta kind of like move out of that, but like they don't know that, and like they're very unaware of that, and it's like Colin immediately blocked that out, and was, because of his ego, he specified like the Wall Street built on top of like the slaves' dens and stuff. So I think that's very interesting, and that's a very common reaction you get when you bring up slavery. It's like, well, that was the past, but like no, there's like, it's just not as, it's like a mask now. It's very masked now. It's not just like this very accepted thing. It's just that it happens. It's just masked. So, yeah.
And again, I do believe there will be very different levels of experience right here within the room around how race plays a role within the society. And I have many friends who would straight away as well respond, and Kenya is very strong in that as well, in saying the social injustices I needed to learn on this project. As in, I came for over 10 years, was over 10 times in the United States. It was really only on this project that I realized how deep the divide runs, and also how deep certain social injustices are, which are mind-boggling, as in to just go into issues like incarceration rate, where true social injustices are still part of society, where it is about attitudes, and it is about University of Missouri students standing up and saying, you know, we this is what we experience for real, and this is the attitudes we experience. And then there will be some of us, again, it's also a question of privilege. Is it really just about discomfort, that topic, or is it about many other social issues that are present as well?
Sorry. I knew Kenya is very well talked about in the audience, and how you said that we need more, like, she's a strong type personality, I think we need more people like that, and people get easily offended, like Colin in the movie, and she had to kind of, even though it felt like she was giving it her all, I felt like she was still holding back, trying to keep it like a light, airy. She was trying to like frou-frou the subject, because I don't think he would have handled her 100%, and I would have loved to seen her go 100%.
I feel like sometimes it's hard. I mean, from my personal experience, sometimes it's hard to weigh in on these types of discussions because I don't know how to, like, I describe myself as a Hispanic, but that's it. And for me, a Hispanic is probably very mixed because it's like you have a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of, African, you have a little bit of everything. Like we were taught from the beginning that you have three, like each of us have Taino, African, and Spanish, and that's what my mindset. So for me, it's hard, like it was strange coming here and realizing that people are really labeled, like they label, like everyone defines themselves as something and everyone's defined by someone else as something, and sometimes I feel like an outsider to those types of discussions because I don't know where I stand or what role I would possibly play on the issue. Like I don't know what color or race I am there. I don't know. And sometimes I feel like it's hard to have a strong opinion because it's not genuine. Like I don't have the background to have it. I don't know.
Do you feel intimidated when people ask you what you are?
No, not at all, because I know how to describe myself very easily, but I do feel intimidated when I have to speak to racial issues because I feel like my understanding is it's limited, and I don't feel like I have a good understanding of any of the positions on the issue because I'm nowhere in that situation.
Right, you want to say as much as you can, but you also want to sound smart about the situation.
Exactly.
So you don't say anything because you don't want to sound stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of.
And there was a couple of days ago in Shenandoah University in Virginia, there was one student very strongly speaking out in saying, we sometimes don't speak because we want to be safe, as in we don't want to offend someone. And that comes from a good value very often of we don't want to offend somebody, we don't want to hurt somebody, and at the same time also we don't want to get hurt. The problem is it will not go away. Often, an issue that is not dealt with will not go away by avoiding it. And political correctness is important for a society to find their style of communicating with each other. And on the other side, where are we avoiding those conversations that need to happen and the healing that needs to happen? I sometimes say to students, when we think of families and there is abuse within families, and we experience it, and we experience within society, in different communities, in churches. If there's abuse, and abuse is not spoken about, it will come through many different channels. The nonverbal channel, the way of eye contact, the way how safe we feel within our own home. So how much more within a society where that will grow? I want to open it up also to both sides and ask, what do you feel, what makes it so difficult to talk about it?
I would say the huge amount of emotions that people have, and I guess it worked out well in this scenario because they had a safe space, like they kept on saying. They felt like they were part of this project. They knew that there were a bigger goal other than themselves. So I guess maybe if we had more events like this, or more places where people felt free to express their emotions and where people knew that no one is trying to offend anybody, then you could have that resolution to see it through, to have that conversation to its to a greater point than people just getting hurt and then walking away from it. You have to work through that pain and get to a point, and you have to have a space where you feel free to be able to express yourself and say these things and have people hear these things as well.
I also feel like they're coming from a background of education, of being intellectuals, of being sensitive and empathetic. Whereas I think if you're coming from a place that isn't so intellectual or so empathetic or so sensitive, you can be met with a kind of resistance that's really belligerent and very angry and very, like when they came up with the idea of putting up a wall, I think it's, you can only hit your head against a wall so many times before you back down. And I think that's a really hard thing to face, and so you just don't try. You know, why bother? Why try when you're just going to be met with so much resistance? Like, this was a lovely thing because they were receptive, but not everyone's receptive, and you can't pick and choose who's, you know, out of a crowd who's going to be receptive. And I think that's part of it, is the fear of that opposition.
There's also an important thing I think everyone should address is that even if you don't feel like you understand the topic that much, like you were saying, you feel like you just don't know enough, I feel like if people try to inform you or direct you in the right way, people who do understand, and I know there are a lot of people that are willing to do that, then the discussion is more freely and more open and healthier.
Somebody of you who wants to respond? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Adam. I work in residence life. I had a similar perspective than I think you had, that some of the conversations are so open-ended that when they become confrontational or they become about a specific point, there's not really a place to go where people feel safe. So when they bring up something about someone's ancestors and what they have done, there's only so much debate that someone can have about that, or only so much apology, or what is the result that they're looking for, the end goal of that conversation. And what ended up happening, like Joe had said, with the symbolism of the wall, I think that there were people in that conversation that started attaching to that vocabulary and that language, and not necessarily in a malicious way, but using that to then be something that was tangible in order to make the conversation continue. And so the conversation became about who was putting up a wall and who was going to take down the wall. And it skirted the issue, but it was almost like a desperate attempt to defend themselves or to justify themselves. And at some point during that conversation, I found myself thinking, I don't even know what they're talking about anymore, because and this is not going to end. And of course, for the purpose of a movie and a conversation, yes, it does end. There's some sort of resolution to it, but it's something that I almost want to pose this question to the group up on stage, but do you feel like there's a race issue at SVA?
Is there a race issue at SVA? Thank
Yes.
you.
Oh, I meant
Yes.
group on stage.
Now is heat in the room. Do you want to, Francis? Are you open to speak? Yeah.
I think, yeah, there is. And I feel like it's mostly because there aren't that many there's not a lot of diversity. Specifically in my department, I am a sophomore, fine arts, and I'm the only Black person in my in my year. And I feel like having such a lack of that diversity, it's hard for people to get to understand someone or like a group of individuals that they're never around.
When it was my first year here, I didn't know anybody. I'm coming into the country blind. When I had my first semester of classes, I noticed a lot of, like all the Koreans would group together, and all the Chinese would kind of like, everybody was in their own ethnic groups, and I just felt intimidated. Like, okay, everybody has a group, and I'm kind of like the outsider, and I don't know if I should join them or kind of like just stay on the sidelines and be like, okay, I know you're hating on me, but I just accept me, please.
I agree. I agree that there is also an issue. I agree that there's a level of grouping. For example, a faculty member had asked me what major I was because we were chatting in the elevator. And I said, oh, I'm a design major. And he goes, ah, yes, the Korean major. And I was like, really? And I was really offended. And I wasn't really sure how to address it. I really wasn't sure. I kind of stood there. He got off, waved goodbye. And I was still standing in that damn elevator being like, what just happened? How, like, what, you know? And I'm biracial. I'm not fully Korean. I'm Caucasian and Korean. And so my background is not just one way or the other. And I don't necessarily identify as just being Korean. And I'm still salty about it. I'm still very offended. And I want to address it. I would like to address it with this faculty member, but I haven't been able to. But yeah, I definitely think that there's a level of sensitivity that I think needs to be brought to this environment, to put it delicately.
You were waiting for a long time.
Hello? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm Jill Gari, and I'm in fine arts as well. And our faculties are all white. And so I'm Dominican. And when I make art, it's a lot about Dominican Republic. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to get critiqued by somebody that does not know where I come from or what I'm trying to do, and put these ideas of how to like make my art, even though, and I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's hard because we need more faculties from different places as well. And even artists come and they talk and they're all white. And I'm like, how are you gonna judge my work if you don't know where I'm from, you don't know my history, you don't know my background, you don't get it? So it's hard. So did you want to say something? No?
Basically what you're saying is you don't know me, so how can you judge my art if you don't know me?
And it's also on, like, they spoke a little bit about, like, microaggressions. So it may not be the obvious, like, how I'm the only black person in my graduating class in fine arts, which is obvious. But it's not even obvious to, like, my classmates. Like, when I mention, oh, you know, I'm, like me and Alex, we're, like, the only ones, they're like, oh. So it kind of made me think of, like, how Collins didn't even realize his world is only white. Mm-hmm. But it's like on a microaggression, like when a student touches my hair, or when someone asks why you make black art, or when, like, when I'm recommended to look at, I'm being like sarcastic, like Picasso all the time. Like it's not, and this exists in SVA, and so like if someone asks why do I make black art, or like how Kenya was saying, you get all these microaggressions, these slashes, and then when you react, like I thought it was interesting in the movie how like even Santos said, you know, I'm the one who made the comment about the burial. But I thought it was interesting how all of the attention went to Kenya. And I questioned, is that because she's a woman? You know, like, why is all the folk, and then even when they were trying to understand her, they used language like anger or aggression, and she never even said that. Like when they were like, you want to, like, how they were trying to say that she needed to change her anger. She was like, I never said anger. So like I
connected a lot with Kenya and the fact that, like, me being a Black woman and the only one, there's a lot of times where I can't take anymore, and when I react, it comes off as I'm the angry Black woman. And how that, like, internalizing that changes how I interact with my classmates, how I address my art. You know, you can't be too radical. So it's just like, I don't know, like SVA is like the obvious in terms of diversity with faculty, with students, with scholarship opportunity, with curriculum. I'm taking a class history of the human body, but we're only talking about Greek and Roman bodies. I'm like, I thought it was human bodies. So like, it's on a lot of levels. And when you don't see yourself in the things you learn, your classmates, your students, and then you have to bring it to everyone nicely, like Kenya said. It affects you.
Oh, I thought you wanted to say something. No. Let's take that moment as well as, you know, their voices. The moment we get real with each other and there's heat in the room, right? And the moment somebody asked, Adam, I think you asked, you know, is there race issues right here at SVA? And people are like, yes. Suddenly it becomes personal, right? Suddenly it's like, oh, it's right here. And I think there's something natural to it, that when there comes a critique, when there comes an impulse, that there's something in us, well, let's talk about the good stuff as well. Let's talk about all the good stuff that we are as well, and as SVA. So there's a natural reaction within us to that, to SVA, or then even more when thinking of hearing real voices on painful issues of race about this society will bring up a lot of is that the right word? Patriotism? Yeah? As in responses that are saying, don't make our country bad. While the person who's expressing it is like, I am American. This is my country. I want to be part of it. I want to be home here. I want to be heard in it. And I want you to hear me in it. So that internal reaction that I'm sure we experience as well around SVA of, let's talk about the good stuff as well, because there's a lot, is a natural reaction within us. And then again, it's like, sometimes I compare it like going to the gym. You know, we go to the gym to train certain muscles. In certain moments, we need to find a way to train the muscle in us to allow discomfort and to allow to listen to the voices that we often at times not listen to, and make space for them. We need to come to a closure in a moment. So is there somebody else who wants to hear from the front or in the back wants to say something? Go for it.
I'm sorry, a little bit off this topic, but I do wish I had seen a little bit more of Marissa and Salvador's story, because we did see a little bit of Salvador's where they showed the wall with how many people died each year trying to cross the border, but we didn't get too much to see the real impacts in terms of even just the conversations between these 6 members about their feelings and how they're impacted by that. So I do wish I'd seen a little bit, maybe a little selfishly, but I do wish I just heard a little bit more and seen how they felt about those things, even considering the elections and all the things that are going on right now in terms of just immigration. I would have just liked to see that a little bit.
I fully agree with you. As in, it's not the full length of the film, so Salvador certainly is more heard. It's often in filmmaking, as in you need to follow 2 characters, as in order to support. It's already such a complex topic, and but the film is created to initiate dialogue. So why don't you bring the Hispanic voice present right now? As in, bring it, as in when witnessing Americans, African Americans, and Caucasian Americans being in dialogue like that, what do you feel? The Hispanic voice, where is the Hispanic voice not heard in the US?
I think all over, personally. I do agree with Maria. What she said was that a lot of times it's sort of like I'm neither this nor that. So where should my opinion lie? Where does this count? So I do. I'm sorry, I forgot. Just got lost in it really quickly. But I don't know. In terms of all of that, I think there is one thing that Salvador said was numbness, and I feel that, I see that in terms of just in New York City, where I've grown up is just very, very poor, and the neighborhoods are very not kept at all. So I do see the numbness, and I mean, in terms of privilege, I do see my privilege in that I'm from Puerto Rico, so I don't have the same fight that Salvador has, but I feel it, you know? I feel the way the looks are, well, you're dark skin, you have dark hair, so I assume you are that, you are this. So that's just my opinion. I do live here where it's obviously very diverse, but I do see where someone who is Latino can't speak to either side very knowledgeably because we're not sure who will relate more.
Salvador comes from a region, and that's a part that the 20 minutes you didn't see, comes from a region in LA where the beach is maybe 2 miles away, and there are Latino children who have never seen the sea because they're coming from a family which is so struggling just to get by on low wages, where the father at times is not present, where a lot of violence within the community. So that's Salvador's story. And it was important to have him in this story because he becomes a natural bridge between them. He becomes a mediator. He's the one who's saying, you know, those conflicts, they're gluing us together. He's talking about, you know, there's not a color of his soul, you know. So thank you for bringing that present, and thanks for saying that, because absolutely, the Hispanic voice, and it was important that that triangle happened as well, and that Marissa and Salvador, they were key for the story. Couldn't come through, or didn't come through in this version. One last comment from anybody of you? Is there somebody who still has a burning point? Yeah.
I wanted to say that Angelique did, she made a better job of explaining what I was trying to say, of not fitting into any of the categories exactly, because it's something that, the only time I think I felt some type of racism at SVA was once that I was in a class, and it was similar to your experience. I was trying to explain a project. I don't know, I was doing a lot of Latin, Dominican-driven work, and it was in design. I was a design major, and I remember once that I was starting to, I was gonna explain a project, and some guy said oh, let's turn the translator on. I was and I think he thought I didn't hear it, but it was I didn't want to say anything, I didn't want to explain anything anymore, and it's I generally don't get people don't always assume that I'm Dominican. Sometimes I think I'm Turkish, so I don't really always get that stereotyping. But my sister, for example, one time went to see an apartment that we were gonna sublet, and the girl asked her oh, where are you from? She was Dominican. She was oh, do you want to be a babysitter? We were what? I don't know. It's just, I think it's a whole different topic, but it happens. It's a different discussion, I think. But yeah.
Sorry.
Go for it.
But you notice that too, not just with one race, it's with many. Also with international students who have a harder time communicating. You see people in the room with you just check out as soon as they begin to speak. And it's so frustrating because their voice is just as valid. And it's well, imagine you're in a foreign country and you're trying to express something that you feel passionate about, and you don't have the language, or you don't have there's a really powerful mind behind that language gap or that barrier. And it's so frustrating to see people just check out. And that's so, it's so mad. I'm so frustrating.
I want to complete with one encouragement and one challenge. The encouragement is when when we think of personal maturity, of maturity of us as a human being, we think of a person who knows their strength and their skills and who can own them and carry them to people. And at the same time, a person as well who knows their shadow and knows their weakness and finds a way of integrating them and being with them and dealing with them. So that's what I sit with when I think of maturity as a human being. And what does it mean as a national identity? As in, where do we make space for owning our shadow and owning our weaknesses and making them part of our whole gift we have to the world as well. And that's the encouragement. I think there's power in us, in the power of empathy, of being able to connect to people of different backgrounds and then open up and learn from that experience. What a transformation. And the challenge is how much we need that. I think the challenge is on the collective aspect. Right now, I'm speaking as a German as well, so topics of how to deal with the shadow of our ancestors is a huge topic for me in my story, and has a huge topic in my personal story of national identity. And I think that's a place where I hated for 7 years living abroad, because I was always the German, and I didn't like that. And I was like, I'm from East Berlin, I'm a conscientious objector. I was to Auschwitz twice before I was 19. I'm aware of the story of don't put me into a certain box. That was my inner reaction. And then after 7 years, there grew a new sense of awareness, which is how few countries actually go there and integrate and find ways of educating an entire population about the crimes of ancestors. And right now, and to make it practical, what it means for today, right now with the refugee crisis, at the time of our government making the really tough decision of letting refugees in, over 70%, 75% were for that decision, knowing it will cost a lot of money, knowing it will create a lot of questions around integration and of personal identity, knowing that politicians say it will change us, who we are. So it's not comfortable. And I do personally believe it has a lot to do with the country was ready for it because we looked at the ills of racism, and we have the history of nationalism and fascism and genocide. So we needed to educate ourselves about it. And that's I guess the question I sit with when looking around us, around in the circle, and that's the challenge of how do we reach those within the US, those students who most need it, those kind of conversations. How can we, as people who are dedicated to it and who want these kind of conversations and who are also a bit more ready for standing with the discomfort, how can we create spaces that are safe where those students who are not ready for it are lovingly supported to step in and engage. I want to close with that quote that is right at the front. People, by James F. Hind. People want to know how much you care before they care how much you know. We're going to make mistakes on the way, along the way. But the moment people are going to see our intention and see we want to learn from this process, we want to learn from each other's diversity, there will be goodness in the room. Thank you so much for engaging in this. Thank you.